Are you stuck? What about unhappy? Join Alena Chapman, author, mentor, and life coach for 30-minute moments as she challenges you to get out of the doldrum and start living your life to the fullest. It's time to celebrate that life with 30-minute moments.
Welcome to 30-minute moments, and this is all for you and the betterment and ease in your life. I'm your host, Alena Chapman, and we have a fantastic day today because we're going to be talking about ourselves. It's self-love that comes into play so importantly. I have to remember back, I always had a lot of confidence and a lot of self-love. And when I was driving in, I was thinking about this because I was thinking about the show. And I was raised that way. I had a fantastic father who just helped me my mother, love her. She didn't understand it, but my father really ingrained it in me. But later on in life, that same father gave me advice that led me down the wrong road. But taking that wrong road was, of course, my choice. And then that road, I lost myself. And for the first time in my life, I started to have serious doubt about who I was. Was I okay? Because I wasn't being accepted in this new road I was taking. And I wasn't being honored, and I wasn't honoring myself. I was giving so much of myself away. I was in a total crisis of who I was. And it was getting myself back on track, finding that girl who was so happy with who she was. And I know everyone says it's such a hard journey, but you know what? It's a journey that is also so revealing and it feels good. It just, every step was like a birth of me coming out again. So don't be afraid to go on that journey. But it starts with that self-awareness. But then leading it into, I feel we need to have that self-love to bring it into our relationships. And that's why I love our guest today. She seems fantastic. I'm just very excited about her. Her name is Dr. Andrea Pennington. Now, she started... Well, let's put it this way. I'm going to start right here. She is a documentary filmmaker, highly acclaimed international TEDx speaker, a visionary brand strategist and global launch activator for lightworkers, and founder of Real Self-Love Movement. All right. So she's been on the Oprah Winfrey Show, the Dr. Oz, TV This Morning, CNN, the Today Show, on and on and on. She started out as an integrative physician, acupuncturist, meditation teacher, and a #1 international bestselling author. But what it doesn't talk about, but what she also talks about, is how she takes this self-love into relationships. Can it happen? Yes, it can. And with that, I would like to bring on Dr. Andrea Pennington. Hello, my dear.
Oh, Alena, hello. It's so wonderful to connect with you.
It is so wonderful to have you on the show. This is a topic that people don't bring out so much. We all talk about self-love, and we all talk about accepting ourselves, and we talk about that journey. But then, okay, so here you are, that wonderful person who has that self-love, who has the acceptance, who has learned about the so-called, the new fashion word, the dark side, the dark shadow, and has accepted it and incorporated it in its life. But now you're entering into relationships with other people, especially that loved one. And it's a challenge sometimes, is it not?
It is. What you just said in the introduction, your own journey, your own path to self-love and rebirth.
Oh, yes.
We all go through that.
Yes, we do.
We all go through it, sometimes in different ways. Not everybody's had, like in my experience, I had kind of some serious years of depression. Not everybody goes through a seriously dark period, but we all go through a process of really getting to know who we are, to love who we are, and then getting to a point where we can live who we really are.
Yes.
And what's interesting is just because you learn it, just because you get a little taste of it, doesn't mean that you might not be triggered. You might get into a relationship with someone.
Yes.
Right?
Isn't that the truth? Yes, we'll talk about these triggers. Yes. And all of a sudden, all that self-love you had for yourself goes right out the window. Yes.
It does have that potential. And so, it's been interesting for me over the last 20 years to really see how this plays out and to help people focus on it with a new awareness and a new sense of self-compassion, really.
Well, talk to me about this conscious relationship idea. I like this. And how do you get the other person to also be in this conscious relationship?
Okay, well, the second half of that question, oh, Lord, we're going to see if we can get all the way through.
I know.
but let's just sort of break it down. First and foremost, if we really are honest with ourselves, most of us are unconscious about what we're attracted to, why we choose one type of person to date over another.
Yes.
And we may think it's just superficial stuff like they got a good job or they look good or they smell good. But if you really, really went deeper to understand the source and the underlying force of your attraction, most of us are unconscious of that. And so what I mean is, people who have studied this far longer than even I've been alive have found that based on our upbringing, the experiences we have in childhood, we tend to prefer a certain type of person over another. Now, that can be based on good experiences you had as a child, as well as some of the painful, not so good experiences. And so we tend to be drawn to someone who has some of the characteristics that we experienced in childhood, not necessarily all of them. But what is interesting is that if we're not conscious and aware of it, we may find ourselves being continually drawn into relationships with people who are abusive, because we may have experienced that in the past, people who are neglectful or emotionally distant. And so this understanding of it's time for us to have a conscious relationship, it starts with us to understand, why am I attracted to what I'm attracted to? What are my boundaries? What are my real desires? If we can be conscious and aware of them and actually say it out loud, like articulate, what do I really bring to a relationship and want from a relationship? That's our first step.
This is interesting. Very interesting. Mm-hmm. And I can actually, Dr. Andrea, you hit it right on the head for me even, because as I've been dating again, I found myself doing this. It was unconscious. And the person I was always pulling in time and time and time and time again was what I thought was this masculine figure who seemed to know everything, sort of like the father. You know what I mean? That's my dad. And I thought, oh my gosh, but you know what? It wasn't working quite right. Because I'm not that little girl anymore. So even though I wanted that comfort of that, soon he was stepping on my toes, or it was, all of a sudden I was put in a position where I was defending my actions again. I thought, wait a minute, I had to sit back. This is so cool that you're saying that. And I have just done this. I mean, just done this. Sat back and said, wait a minute, this is not what I want. This is not who I am anymore. And this kind of person's not going to work. That's the consciousness.
What you just said, Alena, about comfort, you went with what was comfortable.
Yes.
That's what we humans do. We stay in our comfort zone, and it's totally unconscious. We go with what is familiar. And so we're not, saying in our head, ooh, this guy reminds me of my father. He has all these fatherly characteristics. It's very unconscious. But to us, on a deep level, it feels very comfortable and familiar. And so by becoming conscious and aware, it will probably require that you start dating outside your comfort zone.
Yeah, it is. It's time. I'm excited, though. You know what I did? I started listing 5 things or core things that I feel are very important that I want in that other person, but more in that other person in relationship to me. What our relationship's going to hold. And that's what I'm going to concentrate on now. I'm becoming conscious about who I accept into my life. It's very cool. It's very liberating, I have to say. Yeah. Now, you also talk about this relationship vision. I like that because that's kind of what I'm doing with these 5 core things. Talk about how, when you're in that relationship, how this visionary, when you find that person, how do you keep that relationship vision alive to keep the core values in order and are, moving in the right direction?
So this gets back to part B of your first question, which was, how do we make the other person be conscious?
Yes.
And the way that we do that is inviting them to share and co-create a relationship vision. So what does that mean? That means, how do we want to show up in this relationship? Instead of just expecting that, oh, right, we're going to do this 9 to 5 life, and then we come home, we have dinner. Like, most of those things are unsaid. They're unspoken. But instead, what we're inviting you to do is to start speaking out loud or writing it down and saying, what would an ideal relationship look like? Who am I being? What are we doing together? Like, how often do we travel? Do we travel with the kids or without the kids? What sort of fitness regimen do each of us engage in? Or is it alone or is it together? How are we nourishing our bodies? What are we doing to maintain the relationship? Do we read together? Do we pray together? Do we go on relationship workshops? By consciously stating, this is the kind of relationship I want to have. This is how I want to feel. These are the things I want to experience. Then you have a way to benchmark it. Then you have a way to track and come back and say, you know what, honey, I'm not feeling that lovey-dovey feeling. Where are we off? Where have we veered off of our relationship vision? And that's how you invite the other person. If the other person hasn't been doing all this self-help work that you've been doing,
exactly.
If you can at least engage them in this conversation where it says, hey, hon, let's co-create a vision of how our lives would be if we moved into this romantic relationship together. What's important for you? What's important for me? That's how you really express your values. Like, I value a certain amount of alone time. That means, there's going to be times when I go on maybe a spiritual retreat, or I go to my meditation center, or I go out with the girls. And he or she gets to say the same thing. So that's how you engage in a conscious relationship, even if your other partner is not necessarily into all of this woo-woo or spiritual stuff. And it's by creating a vision that you both are accountable to and you both are contributing toward.
I love this. You are listening to 30-Minute Moments, and I'm your host, Alena Chapman, and we are talking to Dr. Andrea Pennington.
You're listening to 30-Minute Moments with Alena Chapman, helping you discover your true purpose on WOWO and at WOWO.com.
Welcome back to 30-Minute Moments for ease and betterment in your life and in your relationships today. I'm your host, Alena Chapman, and we've got Dr. Andrea Pennington, and I want to talk to you. Well, I'm going to bring her right on because I'll tell you, I've got some great questions. So here we go. Dr. Andrea, okay, so I understand this conscious relationship idea. I love that. And I have my 5. And did I always have my 5? Well, kind of, yes. But this is the thing. Women, all right, for instance, I was just telling you offline that this person or these men are very open about letting me know what they expect. Mm-hmm. But as a woman, and it's not like I'm thinking, oh, I can't tell him. That's not what it is. It's just I'm busy. I've got many things on my mind. Yes, I know I shouldn't be thinking of the relationship, but let's be real. I'm a single mom. I have a full-time. I'm also a career woman. I'm very busy. So all those kind of slip by. But I haven't stated. I know I'm not the only woman in the world who does this. So how do we have to become very conscious, Do you have anything to help us bring ourselves forward and to speak up?
Well, this conversation is part of it, right? We're raising women's awareness that we need to speak up. We were talking in the first segment about how we stay in our comfort zones. We go with what's comfortable. Part of that is we have certain unspoken assumptions. And you kind of mentioned it. You kind of think that, oh, that will come in time. I don't really need to say it out loud. We'll just get into a certain flow. And I find that for many of us, it doesn't happen.
No, it doesn't.
So, as women, we need to be honest about what our true desires are, what our intentions are, and what we want and what we will not tolerate in relationships. Because then not only do we have stand a better chance of getting what we want and being understood and valued for who we are. But then we don't have to waste someone else's time and go through the heartache of going down, weeks or months, and then all the things you were hoping were going to happen, they just don't happen. So it's about speaking up and just being an advocate for yourself.
Now, okay, we're going to get a little woo-woo la-la here, okay? Or it's ooh-ooh la-la, I guess it is. And I want to bring up, if we are, all right, and I know this hits many women out there, and men too. It's not just women. Men have sometimes the same problem, but women have it a little bit more because of so many unconscious influences we have around ourselves about sexuality and what's good, what's bad, what you should be, what you shouldn't be. It comes from religious programming, from media, from friends, from parents. It's all over us, everywhere. And it's a certain amount of shame that comes with all these beliefs. Sometimes it's trauma even, but it really doesn't have to be just trauma. It can be just from all the two-edged ways of being. You're either a total devil or you're a total angel. But how do we get to a lot of women are not okay with who they are in their beliefs about sexuality. And if we are not sure, if women are not sure, how can we bring that into the bedroom? How, with the person that we absolutely love? And that's important in a relationship, very important. So, and it's important to be real in there. You know what I mean? So how do you help women? Important. Yeah, how do you help women who are out there, and some men, to believe that it's okay with who they are and what they want?
Well, it involves first investigating. Where did you get your beliefs around sexuality? So that's the first question.
That's a good question. I like that. Yes.
Even before you try to change them, is to just say, wow, do I deserve pleasure? Or, as I found out, I was researching for one of my previous books, The Orgasm Prescription for Women.
Oh, I like that.
Found out
that's good.
I found there were so many women who did not believe they deserved pleasure. They felt like if it took them too long to reach climax, that was a bad thing. And I had to ask them, where did you get those beliefs?
It's belief.
And so that's what people have to look at. Do I deserve pleasure? What is the purpose of sexuality in our relationship?
Yes.
And when you start to ask those questions, and then instantly an answer is going to come up for you, and then you can ask, where did I get that? Did I get that from religion? Did I get it from my parents? Was it just all the people I grew up with? Did I get it from porn? Unfortunately, a lot of sex education now is coming from porn.
Oh, it is.
Can you even imagine?
From women and men, or girls and boys, I should say. It is porn. Yeah.
Exactly. And so if you start to investigate, where did these beliefs come from? And then you can start to work backwards and say, well, are these true for me? Do I really believe that? Are these in alignment with my values? And what I found was the couples and the singles that I talked to when I was researching this book, they all realized that they were holding themselves back, and they were holding their ability to be fully present in their intimate relationships based on beliefs that didn't align with them. And so it's about really investigating and saying, what is my body for? If it's just for procreation, fine. You want to own that. And then you can define that with your beloved. But if you don't know it for yourself, you're going to hold resentment in the bedroom
you are.
When your partner is not showing up in the way you want. And I'm not talking about performance here. I'm talking about expectations. I'm talking about connection and that true intimacy that most people crave in their sensual relationship.
And really, this is all part of self-love. It really is. If you can't own how you think of yourself as a person who can share that affection and that sexual experience with the one you love, then you have missed some of the work in the self-love department. You've got to look at it. But I also want to say we have to give ourselves a break a little bit. Don't be so harsh on yourself. It's really hasn't been that long where women have been able to explore this half. We've had a lot of programming saying that it was only for procreation, and if anything else, it was not good. Or women you marry the virgin, you don't marry the other one. You don't. There's so many different things that have been put on us for so long, men and women, that we're really coming onto a new frontier of total self-acceptance and enjoyment.
It is a new frontier, and I'm glad that you brought up this idea of compassion, because for the women who were shamed, let's say they had their first sexual experience at an early age, or people carry shame for years, and then even when they get married and in a beautiful, committed relationship, they find that they cannot open up intimately because they're carrying that shame. And that's where self-compassion comes in.
Yes.
You've got to be compassionate for the person that you were then.
Yes.
You did the best that you could with the knowledge you had, but you've got to bring yourself into the present with a new context, with a new perspective on who you are now. And that's where self-compassion and forgiveness comes in, so that you can enjoy the relationship that you're in now with yourself and with your beloved.
You are listening to 30-Minute Moments, and I'm your host, Alena Chapman. Come right back. We'll learn how she got to this point.
This is 30-Minute Moments with Alena Chapman, helping you find your inner self every Sunday on WOWO and at WOWO.com.
All right, everyone. You are listening to 30-Minute Moments, and I'll tell you what, it is time for the shift. So we are going to talk about that pivotal moment that helped Dr. Andrea to see something different, or even to embark on what she is doing now. Do you have a story for us?
Well, I do.
I know you do.
We all have a story.
Oh, don't we?
Yeah, I have become really passionate about self-love and compassion because for the early part of my life, I did not have love for myself.
Wow.
I was incredibly harsh and judgmental, and I didn't love myself. And it's because I had really grown up, like so many other people. My parents got divorced, and everybody processes a family breakup in different ways. I happen to be the youngest of 3 children, and the impact that it had on me was I missed my dad. When they broke up, my mother moved from Nevada to Colorado, and there is, distance. We didn't have Skype. We didn't have FaceTime back then.
No.
It was just a telephone, and I only saw him a couple times a year. And that impacted me because I missed him. And so having our phone conversations, my dad happens to be very into education and academics. And so the way that I could get his attention and approval was to tell him how great I was doing at school. And that set in motion in my own subconscious this need for outside approval and validation. Now, of course, I have the words for that now. I didn't have that.
And conditional love, too. Wasn't it conditional love also? You had to do something for the love? Yeah.
Exactly. Now, of course, I actually did learn in my teenage years, I did realize that my dad loved me, even if it wasn't the time to be telling him, oh, look, I got straight A's on my report card. But by then, it had already been so ingrained, this pattern of looking outside for validation and approval and affection, that by the time I was in my 20s, I could see this pattern that I was in the wrong kinds of relationships. Just like you talked about in our first segment about being attracted to a certain kind of man that had certain characteristics that were very fatherly. And I started to stop and ask myself, what is going on? And I noticed that I would sabotage relationships as soon as it got too serious or too heavy.
Yes.
Because as soon as somebody fell in love with me, I was like, what do I do with all this love? I don't even know. Like, if it's not tied to my behavior or accomplishments, oh my God. And so it got to a point. I know it sounds pitiful, but
it's hard. It's hard. Way to be. Yeah.
But I did get to a point in my early 30s where I had built up my career. I had gotten the degrees and certifications. And, as you mentioned in the intro, I'd been on Oprah and TV and publishing books. And yet I did not feel good about myself. It's like
wow.
I had everything that people would say should make you happy. You should feel so good about yourself. You should feel so pumped. And I didn't feel any of that. I felt like, if anything, I was afraid people would find out I wasn't smart enough and that I hadn't done enough. And it was at a moment of really going through a deep, dark depression that I really called out to God and said, look, you got to help me here, because I do not want to go on with my life like this. I wasn't suicidal. I wasn't going to take my own life or anything, but I was really calling on the divine to throw me a lifeline.
Sure.
And it was having you talked about going woo woo la la. I had an out of body experience where I literally thought God was taking my life. I literally left my body. I was drawn into this white light.
Yeah.
And that's when I saw this life review, and I understood why I was depressed. And what was shown to me is that when we come to this earth, we each are like these little pure lights, this pure soul. And it's up to us to figure out who we are and to live our truth. It's not up to society or our parents or our religion.
No.
And when I saw this image, this total vision, I felt such love and acceptance for myself, for everything.
Yes.
It was like I just had this inner knowing, like, oh, I'm lovable just as I am, because we come from love. We are love.
We are love. Totally.
So
yes.
when I kind of came back into my body and dried my tears and really kind of started asking, like, what just happened to me? It was then that I went on this pursuit for understanding how do we get back to this path of loving ourselves.
Oh.
And that's why I do what I do now.
I love this story. I had something similar happen to me where I experienced that. So I totally get this and how it does change everything. How can people find out more about you if they want to?
Well, you can visit realself.love, and you can get more information, meditations. You can download our self-love manifesto and see a bunch of free videos by visiting realself.love, or you can just type in my name, AndreaPennington.com.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. And for those of you who want to learn a little bit more about Alena, go to soulmanifesto.com and really start to, I help you to tap into that beautiful inner divine. So either way, you get that wonderful reinforcement that you need to grow. Dr. Andrea, I am so happy to have you on. And I think you have offered so many cool things for everyone. I do hope you'll join us again at some other time. I would love to talk to you further about this topic.
I'd love that. Thank you so much for having me, Alena.
As always, connection with the self, connection with others. Namaste.
This has been 30-Minute Moments featuring Alena Chapman. If you missed an episode, download it now at wowo.com.
Podcasts by Federated Media.